Welcome, everyone today. Happy to have Nicole Carline here as my guest this week, how to pursue more meaning in your career. And just as a little bit of the backstory, Nicole and I, we live in the same town, and we actually met a couple of times in person, and we had a chance to learn about each other there. And that's, in-person networking is something I'm looking forward to doing a lot more of too. So I really look forward to this. And one of the questions I had even going into it, Nicole, definitely talk about what you do is how did you come up with the title for this session, or what were you looking to do when we have the discussion today?
Yeah, definitely. Well, Ken, first and foremost, thanks so much. By the way, I love that little intro that StreamYard does.
Yeah,
I thought that was so cool. And I definitely have to tell Danielle about that one too, as we're transitioning into this platform. But that
sure.
was awesome. So, hi everyone. My name's Nicole Carline. And as Ken mentioned, I live here in Wayne, New Jersey. Born and raised, but I actually took some time away from New Jersey when I went off to college at Indiana University, and I ended up staying in the Midwest for about 10 years. And I found myself back here, married now with two children. And so it's great that Ken and I had this opportunity to meet. And I actually can't remember like how exactly we crossed paths, but names came up, and I remember reaching out to you and hearing about this guy that's all
Was it
over
was it
LinkedIn.
was it the Facebook group? Was it Moms of Wayne or something like that?
Yes,
It was the Moms of
Moms in
Wayne.
Wayne. Yes.
I'm
And I
not
think
allowed.
your
I'm not
wife
allowed to,
responded.
and I'm not allowed to be in that group actually. So I think Paula actually was the one.
Yeah, your wife responded and said, "Oh, you should meet my husband, Ken." And that's how she put it together. So I reached out to you, and we had this great chat, and I shared with you my journey and my transition, which was to pursue a more meaningful career. Okay, because I spent 20 years in the corporate space as a
Hmm.
global sales and IT leader, and I managed a lot of teams, throughout the world. And I got to a point in my career where I realized I was just constantly chasing the wrong carrot. Right? I felt like I was just chasing the wrong carrot at the end of the day. It was the money, it was the title, and no matter where I was at my point in a career, I realized that I'm not fulfilled in a way that I want to be able to make an impact on people's lives. Right. And so I had to go on my own personal journey
Hmm.
about pursuing a more meaningful career. And I'll certainly share more about that topic with you. But the reason why I shared this topic today, it's something that myself, as I'm the president of the Wellbeing Hacker now, and my business partner Danielle Poza, who's also my cousin, by the way.
Okay.
She, and unfortunately couldn't be here today, but she helped me through that journey and that path. And now that's what we do. We help seasoned professionals, so similar to like myself, who are going through that time in our life where we felt frustrated, where we felt burnt out in that in that career, and where we knew we were meant for more. We were meant
Hmm.
to do more, like provide a bigger impact, make a bigger difference. And I really started to say, what is it? What is this direction that I'm following? Is this really it at the end of the day? And so I needed to make that transition. And I think a lot of people, especially if they've been in a career for quite some time, 10, 15 years, they start to, and I also believe sometimes there's a significant thing that happens in their life, and a life event, a
Hmm.
tragedy or a loss or a divorce, something that happens, that I think people start to reflect and ask themselves that question,
Right.
what is it?
So I'd be curious to know who else is joining today. Put your information in the chat. We'd love to brainstorm. I see Joan Smith is here. Joan and I have gotten to know each other through different events as well. I know
Excellent.
one of the reasons I picked this topic or thought about it making sense is my career changed. I was in corporate for a while, and for me, things when my mom passed away, and she passed away
Hmm.
now, it's been 5 years. I kind of did a little bit of a thinking about, do I really want to still do this anymore?
Right.
It was really hard for a little while, and I realized I'm just done with the corporate mindset. I didn't know what I was going to do next.
Yep.
And then of course COVID happened, so I really didn't know what I was going to do next. But
Right.
it put me in a certain level, certain perspective. It's like it's not as important to be part of a group and going from place to place and dealing with the grind of commuting to New York City and
Right.
all that stuff. And I'll never forget, it actually happened. I was at the Port Authority in New York, getting right off the bus, and I got a
Hmm.
call from my mom's neighbor, "You got to come home." And I'm
Wow.
like, "Oh my God." Um, it just makes you really put. So I had to rush to work. I got my laptop, came right back, and the rest of the next week or 2 weeks were a blur. And people in the workplace, they say take as long as you want. But at the same
Right.
time, I'm just like, do I really want to come back to the office? I mean,
Right. Of
and
course.
so yeah, and so that was kind of it. And it was the second time it happened because my father passed away when I was coming home from the Port Authority. On the
Wow. I'm sorry to hear that.
No,
I
I mean,
know.
that was they were both. I don't want to say expected, but they were both old. But that was like the light bulb.
Yes.
And Jones said here, stagnant, no growth many times after being at the same company for so
For
long.
so long.
And,
Yeah.
and Jones said, I'm in DC and have had challenging commutes for several years. And I think even the idea of working from home now or a lifestyle balance, I mean, I think that's a big part of the idea of meeting. I mean, what is more important? Is it
Yep.
important to have a fulfilling career or having a career? I mean, money is important and
Of
security is
course.
important, but it's also
Yes.
in your case, you know,
Yep.
you leave that there's a challenge when you go out on
Yes.
your own and have to do something else. But I love the idea of being able to do something I like and feel,
Absolutely.
and so I'm sure you can relate to that too.
I can absolutely relate. And, first and foremost, I could relate to the experience that you had with your mom. And that
Uh-huh.
was also something I experienced. I was 21 years old when I lost my mom. So I lost her. She was 53 years old. And I think that was a very big, moment where I really reflected and said, wow, life is short. There is no guarantees, right? There's no guarantees to retirement. There's no
Right.
guarantee to enjoy this life, once you retire and things like that. And it did allow me to start just focusing more and being present in the moment and not taking life for granted and taking care of my health and all of those kind of things. So I had a different perspective early on, and it actually was even, I feel like I was more intentional
Hmm.
because right at the time that my mother passed away, I was graduating from college. And so I was more intentional about the type of career I wanted to get
Hmm.
into because I felt helpless in that scenario with my mom passing. And I said, I really want to be with a company that's doing good, that's helping patients. And so I ended up starting out my career in the medical device industry, and I would work in the operating room and I would train surgeons and nurses on how to use devices for the patients. So I actually was in the same room with the patients, and that was really rewarding, right? It was rewarding to know that the products that we were producing really helped and gave people, great patients, great results. But then, throughout time, over a time period, after doing that for 12 years, I started to make a transition into the technology industry. And it's interesting because I do not call myself someone who's extremely tech savvy.
Hmm.
So I somehow stumbled upon working for a Microsoft partner and also with Microsoft. Um, and but that all of a sudden started to where I started to realize it wasn't that same experience, right? For me personally, I learned so many great skills and strategies and had tremendous experience there, but it wasn't that same kind of fulfillment in terms of what I was doing. And so that then started to lead to some frustration and to some burnout. And I had to start getting more clear in terms of how am I going to make this transition, right? I've been in this workforce for almost 20 years. I have a lot of skills and experience. And something that, as I was going through, and I'll, share a little bit more with you, because this journey was a bit long for me. I was trying to figure it out on my own for some time, and I really struggled with it. But it wasn't until I reconnected with Danielle, and she had put this highly structured course in place that allowed me to start peeling back the onion. And there was a question she had asked me on one of our coaching calls, and she said, "What do people come to you for?" And it was one of those things where I never really thought about it, right? Because when people come to you, you just somehow, have the answer, right? But when you really start to think about why people come to you, what are they coming to you and asking you for, you will start to see these patterns in your life. And I started to think, I said, wow, people come to me about job advice, all the career advice, how to set yourself apart in the interview process, how to brand yourself, resume, salary negotiation, all of those things. And it's just natural for me to just share what I've learned throughout the years. And so that really started to open up this space for me that said, wow, like, I love this. It's very natural. I always loved helping people figure out what their next step is and what their journey is and how to unlock like their greatest potential.
I know when I was in corporate, and this was what I kind of was my thing, I would be on projects, I would do things, but I never really got the sense of what was I really doing that made sense for like other people. And so it's like I would, it's like I would be doing this project. It was at AMC, which was a network, and I was involved with scheduling and all that. But I'm like, what does this have to do? How is this really fulfilling for me? I'm a cog. People are never going to know what I do. Not that I want the notoriety, but I just didn't feel fulfilled about it. So when I decided what I wanted to do, I went back to the issues that I had when I was in job search. I couldn't find people to help and support me. I didn't know where to get started. So it became an easy thing for me to do, just to have networking events. And because I'd gone through it, I became empathetic. But the biggest thing is I just woke up one morning and said, I don't want to be a cog anymore.
Right.
Because, that wasn't fulfilling for me.
Right. Exactly.
So I just want to put a couple of comments in here.
Yeah, no, I love the comments. Thanks, everyone.
Wasn't challenged anymore, and I decided to relocate to Vancouver to seek new challenges.
Wow, that's so interesting. And how's that going, John?
I'd be curious to know. And then we think of people coming just for certain things as a natural talent.
That is so true.
For me, the hardest thing of all, besides everything else, was putting myself out there and speaking to people. Because in IT, you can hide behind a cubicle. You can send an email. You can text. You can kind of go in a meeting and not say anything.
Right.
Like, unless you're asked to. But when you're, you have to be kind of bare about things here and put yourself out there. And that's not always easy for me to do. It wasn't in the beginning. So, but I've gotten better with it at time. And I think that's a very important thing. I feel I may be making a difference with one person, but I feel so much better. And last night, actually, I felt miserable. I have to be honest, because one of the people there was in a really bad place. We didn't even talk about job search. We talked about self-care.
Yeah. So important.
And it was like, it was not what I anticipated, but as all of us there, we were just supporting each other.
Wow.
And we said, job search, if you need to take time off, you take time off, you take care of yourself.
Right.
So, I'm happy that this resonated with you, Rachel.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that actually is, self-care is priority. I'll never forget, I had a neighbor, unfortunately he's passed, but we know him from Long Beach Island, and it was our neighbor. And I'll never forget, he always used the term, your health is your wealth. There is no other. And for someone like myself, who also had been in the medical device industry, there was a time I was working with many different families and patients who had stroke, who had ALS, who had autism, and I was providing communication devices for them. And that was something that often the families, the parents have always said, your health is truly your wealth. at the end of the day. Self-care is, is priority. So Ken, let me ask you the question. What
Sure.
do you do for your own self-care?
A few things.
Yes.
I learned during COVID to block out time on my calendar to be out of the office, even though I
Yes.
wasn't out of the office, but I'm just
Hmm.
kind of decompressing.
Definitely.
And the other thing is I've prioritized things like right now, I have a lot going on with the family and everything. But what I've started to do more recently is I've actually made a decision to go away on vacations, which when you're in a corporate environment, it's very hard to get into the mindset that you're going to take time off and not feel that you have so much stuff coming back. And what if
Right.
I'm missing stuff and I have to do? And this is not to say when people are working corporates, it's not a bad thing. But I
Of
would
course.
constantly be thinking about checking emails, what's going on, what have I missed? So I make a conscious decision now to take some time off, whether it's a long time or not, just to do absolutely nothing. I call it a
Yes.
digital detox. And I don't know if
Yep.
that's something that you talk about or not, too.
Oh, definitely. In fact, I have a few, there's a few things. So, and I'm sure many of you on the line here could also relate to something like this, but
Someone
the
says,
first time,
health coach that says the same thing at the end of your health is your wealth.
I love it. Yep, absolutely. We're on the same page. So with that being said, there was a time when our boys were young, right? When they were in daycare, and I just remember the time when my husband and I, you're working like round the clock. Your kids are not sleeping through the night, so
Right.
you're like a zombie. You're showing up for work each day, and you're not even fully there, right? Because you have so many sleepless nights. And I got to this point and I said, wow, this is not sustainable. Like there's no time for myself or for him. Like we haven't prioritized, ourselves anymore. We've completely lost track of just even, working out and fitting in exercise and all of those things. And Greg and I decided to go for a number of reasons, but we went to a Tony Robbins event,
Okay.
Unleash the Power Within.
Right.
I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan. My father used to listen to the tapes when he was driving us to work every day. And so it was just, I always like had his, motivational talks in my mind. But my husband and I went, and there was something really interesting is we learned a lot of techniques and strategies around self-care, right? So it was one of the first places where I did start to learn how to meditate. And it was the first place that I really started to learn how to create space in my calendar. In fact, we learned and decided to start setting our alarm for 4 o'clock in the morning after we came back from that event. And I'll tell you, the first month was brutal, right? But to this day, our alarms now go off at 4:30. We're out of bed. But we take time, work out, meditate, have a gratitude journal, read. And this all happens before 6:30 a.m. Before then, the boys wake up, and we finally got our time back for self-care. So I think it's possible for everyone. You might not be a morning person, but you have to just carve out something in your day and remember those things that, really fill you up. Like I missed reading, I missed journaling, I needed to do
Mhm.
that. And so that completely sets a completely different tone for the day, right? When you get to do that. And by the way, I didn't just start doing that when I became more of an entrepreneur. I did that when I was also in that corporate space, in that life. Like I just had to wake up earlier to
Mhm.
get to those calls that were early in the morning on my calendar, just to feel like I was setting time for myself.
So how do you define when it says, how do you define meaning when it says how to pursue more meaning? Now, a career could
Yep.
be a corporate career or it could be an entrepreneur, solopreneur. So how does that get defined?
Yeah. So we actually say there's multiple different paths,
Hmm.
7 different purpose driven paths for a career, right? And first and foremost, you really have to understand like what truly brings you joy,
Mm-hmm.
What is going to, how are you going to get paid?
Mm-hmm.
And what is your state of flow? Okay. State of flow means, do you truly understand your natural strengths and your talents, right? Because that's really important when we're doing things that are natural to us, our strengths. So you had mentioned earlier being in IT, right? You were in a cubicle and you kind of
Yep.
liked being there,
Yep.
right? And then when you went out to LinkedIn, you really overcame some of that introvertedness
Oh
that you
God.
had,
Yep.
right? Well, in my scenario too, what I was finding in my career was I was starting to take on more responsibilities that were not my natural strength. So I'd have to analyze a lot of reports. I'd have to get down into discussions on legal and finances. And this was not my strength. My strength has always been communication and positivity and facilitating workshops and inspiring people, right? And in the
Yeah.
room. And so when I do that, I'm in a state of flow. I can do that naturally. I enjoy it. And so you have to start to peel back the onion a little bit to understand these components of what you really enjoy, what's the difference that you want to make, and you have to align it. So for instance, some people might actually feel that in a corporation, they have a mission. And
Mm-hmm.
in that mission, they could really align to it, right? They can really align to that mission. It could be like a company like Patagonia, right? An
Mm-hmm.
outdoorsy company, someone who loves the outdoors and knowing that they're doing sustainable practices. Someone could feel like they're just being part of an organization where they're tied to the mission of a company, right? And so there's a lot of great companies that are out there that have missions, and some people it's as simple as, feeling that way. For others, they are driven by something that they either really, are extremely passionate about, or maybe something that they really are frustrated with in this world, right? We have some clients who feel so frustrated that healthcare is not accessible to everyone, right? We have some clients who are so driven by um, health and well-being and love companies like Peloton, can see themselves working for that organization, right? And so you have the ability to work for a corporation where you either have, alignment with the mission, right? You're tied to
Right.
something that's bigger. You also have a path to work for a nonprofit that could be of an organization. You could also work for maybe a smaller profitable company, a more conscious company, right? There's B
Right.
corporations that are out there. And some people choose the path of entrepreneurship, right?
Right.
And so there's multiple paths that you can take. I think, what what we typically say is you have to flip the script on how you've been job searching. And
Mm-hmm.
Ken, I think you're going to appreciate this too. There's a lot of people out there right now, they're just sending hundreds of resumes out to different companies because they've been in a certain role, and they're just getting it out to as many companies as they possibly can, right? And what we say is, you know what? You have to, if you really want to start and you're just looking for a job, then okay, then that's a path that you can take. But if you truly want to do work that's meaningful, you have to understand yourself first, and you have
Sure.
to know what you really care about and what kind of impact you want to make and what's the legacy that you want to leave. It's not just about your career. Your career is part of it, but you want to know, like, what's the impact that I have made on family, on friends and peers and so forth. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to dissect that first, and then you have to think about, the types of differences that you want to make in this world. And sometimes it's not even, it doesn't have to be big. It's not like you have to go out and say, I want to solve world hunger.
No.
It could be much simpler than that,
Well, for
right?
me, one of the things which And we always talk about volunteering as a good thing
Yep.
to do. But I'm going to tell you why volunteering is a good thing besides the way it always is. You learn about certain skills which you can't put in the workplace the same way. Like, for example, conflict management with a
Hmm.
bunch of people that are volunteers and are trying to
Yes,
get something done. You learn about yourself and you learn how to play nice in the sandbox per se
that's right.
without it being a paid position, but you practice in a way that it's not going to affect a job, but you learn about yourself that way. Like I
Yep.
learned that I'm a good person to kind of be on the sidelines and try to be a referee, but there are
Yep.
times you have to know when. It's like know when to hold them, know when to fold them, sort of thing with Kenny Rogers. You have to know when to get involved and how to get involved, and that was
Yes.
a skill which I learned over the years, which came in actually pretty handy when
Yep.
I was dealing with things in corporate, and even now. You know, you have guidelines, you have things you do and don't do, but I think that's how you learn about yourself. As an
That's right.
introvert, first thing I did is I started reaching out to extroverts.
Yep.
Hardest thing for me to do.
Absolutely right.
But I
Yes.
reached out to this, and it was like one of those things I could not follow this extrovert going all around, all around, all around. And after a while, we had a conversation, and this person said, I didn't realize that I was coming across that way. And I said, that's okay. We're going to work
Yes.
together. We're going to
Yeah.
come to that common place. But you have to learn not just about yourself, but about others in a different space.
Absolutely. Always. Yes.
And, and,
That's the
and Joan said here, I'm accepting my natural talents, ignored and really didn't think much of them. Coaching helped with this.
right.
Sometimes you need to have a family member, a friend, or someone just tell you about yourself in a different,
Yes,
maybe a hiring manager or a coworker will.
that's right. An outside perspective. What do you think that I do well? How do you think of me? Right? What are
Yeah.
some things that why would you come to me? What do you think that I have that's valuable? Right? Or what? So you have to ask people and just understand and hear it from others, because I don't think we always give ourselves enough credit. And there's also some great assessments that are out there too, that
Hmm.
are research based, that I think gives you some inputs to understand more about who you are. And that's what I loved. Like when I was in the corporate space, oftentimes we would do like the DISC assessment, right?
Uh-huh.
And I would love to understand everyone's human behaviors, right? So individuals who typically fell in D and dominant, we knew were results driven, outcome driven. They do not like a lot of detail. If you send them an email, do it in bullet points. So when you understand others' behaviors,
Yep.
right, it makes it easier for you to learn and how to communicate, and you become more accepting of those
Well, that was the
individuals
first thing
too.
when I would start a new position, whether I was a consultant or whatever it was, I would go to my managers and I
Hmm.
would say, how do you want to be stay in touch? Are you an emailer? Are you a texter? Are you a
Yes.
stop by the desk person?
Right.
And just to what level? Because you don't want to over communicate. And sometimes that helps.
Yep.
At least it helped me out because as an introvert, I was sometimes afraid to say certain things or do certain things. So I just wanted to get out in front of things. And for
Absolutely.
me, it was also as much of like, I don't want to say I had low self-esteem, but I just did sometimes was so afraid of doing the wrong thing and
Yes.
having it come back to bite me. But
Right.
I think that was learning about me.
That's right.
In retrospect, one of the aha moments for me was 15 years ago. I was
Hmm.
working at a company and I realized I did not want to get promoted anymore. I wasn't interested in going up the corporate ladder. I was happy with where I was.
Right.
Which management didn't want to hear.
Right.
They want you to go up the ladder. I'm like, I'm happy where I am.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, I am, because I'm not dealing
Right.
with stress. Now back and the point is they realized that I wasn't going to be long term with them, and that was okay
Yeah.
because I knew enough about myself. I didn't want to deal with the drama. I didn't want to deal with having that core responsibility
Yeah.
for other people. So
Exactly.
that was a learning, and even to this day, and I actually posted about it today. I have a journal from 15 years ago. I have comments I've put in there, things I've said after
Yes.
leaving each job, raw. but I go back
Yep.
and read it just to make myself accountable. I realize that every day is
Absolutely.
going to be different than the day before.
Yeah, I think writing, I do a lot of writing and journaling myself, right? And I think that makes such a huge difference when you start to see some of those things, and I'll go back to Joan's comment here in a
Sure.
moment about Gallup strengths, because we're a huge believer in Gallup. In fact, my business partner Danielle, that was the only organization she ever wanted to work for graduating from college, and she did. It was
Hmm.
the only company that she applied to and that she wanted to work for because she loved their mission and
Hmm.
she loved exactly what they were doing in the workplace. And so she was a management consultant, and that's the first thing that we look at with clients is we have them do the strengths assessment, because your strengths will tell you a lot about who you are and what you're naturally good at. And by the way, it's excellent for interviewing, because
Hmm.
I think many people give a lot of general common types of answers when it comes to your strengths, but it's an artifact that you can use on your interview. You could point to it, you can speak to specific examples of how you leverage your strengths and role and how you can contribute to an organization. So it's really powerful. And it's a great tool. It's a great tool.
I know one of the things which, and when I work at Lee Harris as a career coach, and I find a
Yes.
lot of people that are in a situation that they don't know what to do next, and a lot
Yes.
of it is just the self care, and let's just take a step back. And I always say to them, in a general way, what of your past accomplishments? How will they resonate with a future employer? Because people are so tempted. They listed all the stuff they've done. That's
Yep.
great. But what's in it for me as a hiring manager? What's in it for me as a potential client?
Right.
And that's a hard pivot for a lot of people to take and to understand because
Yes.
it's the mindset.
It's the mindset. That's what it is, right? It's what we've known. So, you asked before, like, what is meaning in your career? And
Yeah.
the way that I really even look at it is like you jump out of bed, right? You
Uh-huh.
truly are excited about the work that you do, and it's something bigger than just yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's just something that's bigger than yourself. And knowing, like, you know that there's a difference that you're making, the impact that you're making, whether it's on a team of people or whether it's on something in the world,
Mm-hmm.
right? A big challenge. So just, having more meaning just gives you this sense of fulfillment. And to be honest, if you look at Gallup, speaking of Gallup, right? Because we actually refer a lot back to their state of their global report that they put out every single year. And less than 30% of people, I want to say it's 27% of people are highly engaged in the work that they do in the corporate setting. So that means they are only 27% of people are actively engaged, enjoy coming to work each day, feel
Mm-hmm.
like they're making an impact, enjoy know that they're doing great work. 70% or more are either what we call quiet quitting, or just
Uh-huh.
not, or just
Right.
disengaged. And then there's a percentage within that, about 17 to 20%, that are these actively loud quitters, like hate their job,
Yep.
actively talk about it in the organization. It's like, that this person is dreading coming to work every single day. So so when you see that only 30% or less than 30%, right, of
Uh-huh.
people are truly actively engaged and thriving in work, that's, that's a challenge. That's a challenge for companies and
So
their
this is interesting
productivity.
too. And this refers to the disc. I mean,
Yep.
um, my disc style changed significantly during a career transition. I don't know if you find that or not with what you're doing. And there are significant differences between my natural and adapted styles.
Oh,
With
interesting.
more meaning in my career, I believe my natural and adapted would be closer aligned.
Yeah, it's interesting that I think what Ren is saying here is that her disc style changed um, pretty significantly. And I'd love to hear a little bit more, because what we've seen with these assessments, even with the strengths assessment, if someone had taken it 10 years ago,
Uh-huh.
most of the time it is the same, right? The same top five strengths, or maybe one has shifted or changed. It doesn't change drastically. And I've taken disc a few times myself, and I keep showing up on the dotted line influencer all the time, right? That is the
Right.
same one. So it's interesting that that showed up a bit differently, Ren, right?
Right.
I'd be curious to hear a little bit more, like what you were initially, because I also think with the disc, sometimes we could have a tendency with that report to answer in a way that's expected of us sometimes.
I know. See, when I think back to my journey,
Mm-hmm.
um, I graduated from college with a degree in speech and theater,
Yeah.
spent 10 years in communications, then
Mm-hmm.
decided I needed to make more money because I had a family. So I
Right.
went into IT, which was miserable for me for many years because I never really liked it, but I did it. And then I just kind of pivoted from there to more of a using my writing and my IT to become like a business analyst type person,
Yeah.
and working with other people. But what I just didn't like was the corporate environment. After all those years, I was just so tired of the grind.
Right.
And so what I'm doing now, I look at as a combination of all those skills, but it's one of those things that happens over time. It's one of the things I say this to people all the time. When you graduate, what you're going to end up with is not where you started in some
That's
cases.
right.
And
Of course.
we all go through multiple career changes. And,
Absolutely.
and I think that's a big part of it too. I think um, we're all evolving, always learning. Um,
Yes.
and I think the best thing that I find when I started doing these events 4 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
these basically I did them as an opportunity for people who are out of work to just
Right.
chat.
Yes.
And then people would chat, and I'd say, if you have a presentation, you want to run it by the group, let's just talk about it. And
Right.
then the next thing you know, other people started joining. It was
Yes.
never my intention for it to go as long as it did.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm like, well, I don't want to let people down, and I'm enjoying it.
Yes.
But after a while, I said, I just can't do this anymore the same
Right.
way.
Right.
And that's the
Well,
self.
of course, right. There's different things that you start to do. I think that's perfectly fine. I think
Yeah.
we have to, you know, I think we have to have an open mind and realize, right, that sometimes we are starting to go down a new path. So, my first path, my first transition out of corporate, I actually I gained so much confidence back after going through the legacy builder program, which we do today, right? I gained so much confidence because I believe that when you are frustrated and when you are someone who is starting to question your career path, you start to question yourself. What am I really good at?
Mhm.
What can I really do? And then you have that imposter syndrome. You have these
Yep.
thoughts and you start to question yourself, right? So there's so many different things that go through your mind. And, you really need to just kind of take a step back and really uncover and unpeel that onion about yourself again,
Right.
right? But with that being said, I came out, I was really confident, and I said, I have a tremendous amount of skill sets. I could go on and I could do some consulting on my own for organizations because I've learned sales strategies and techniques. I've learned digital solutions that can be implemented in the IT world. I have many different, I have a lot of different strategies that I have implemented and that I know and that I can execute at other places. And so my first transition out of the corporate space was I decided to open up my own LLC
Uh-huh.
and become a consultant for organizations. Okay. And I was very fortunate because I had good relationships with a lot of the customers I had worked with previously.
Mm-hmm.
And Merck had actually reached out and they said, listen, we heard that you left Microsoft, you're on your own. We'd like to bring you on to help us start up this digital strategy here in our manufacturing space. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because there is an identity that we hold for ourselves. And I held this identity of being in the corporate space for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know exactly how to let go of that. That first transition was like, okay, I'm going on my own. I can consult. I can, have my own rate, my own time. This is a great transition. But I also realized, is it still the work that I truly love at the end of the day? Right? And in that transition period, I actually said to Danielle, who is the founder of the Wellbeing Hacker, I said, Danielle, my experience was so transformational going through that process. I want to help coach some of the clients that are coming through. Would you let me do that? Can I coach some of the other clients that come through the program? I want to see their results. And it was over this period of time when I'm consulting, and doing my own thing, I was also coaching clients. And it was those phone calls that I was getting that were like, Nicole, you and Danielle, my life changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was in this terrible corporate environment. I'm a franchise owner now. I love the work that I do. I've met so many new people in my life. I've gotten out of bad relationships. I mean, there's so many things in their life that changed, right? And it was those phone calls, Ken, that finally, where I was saying to myself, God, it's those phone calls I love even more. I'm making a bigger impact here. So I needed to take that next step and say, okay, now I'm ready to put myself in this place and do this full time. I'm enjoying this. I love it. I'm making an impact. But when you're saying that, today we provide executive coaching services with our program. I run workshops and facilitate workshops for individuals, for corporations. But to your point, the path might change, right? And there's always going to be times you meet new people, you start engaging in new groups, someone else might need some help and service. And so, I love the fact of, I think we're in this mindset that you have to kind of rely on like one income sometimes, but I actually love the fact of like multiple revenue stream. Right.
I know I started doing consulting when I was working corporate, just to give me an opportunity. Now, people that are out of work, I recommend you think about how you can do things, the different projects, different things on the side.
That's right.
Test the waters. It's probably as good a time as any to see what your strengths may or may not be, because you don't have that. Job search is a whole journey in and of itself, and there's lots of things to deal with. But you also want to think about what actually makes you wake up in the morning really happy and fulfilled.
That's
and that is not always easy to do when you're working. And it's not nothing is easy to do now, but I want you, Nicole, if you want to put up your contact information, if people want to reach out to you.
Yes, I know. I was just looking at the time. This has gone by way too fast. But I would love if there's any questions, right? Like, is there any questions from the audience, just so we touch on anything?
I mean, we'll have you back again for sure, obviously. I mean, but I want to, I wanted to do, this is a little different thing for me to have a different type of discussion like this, because usually I'm all about, this is how you do job search. This is how you do LinkedIn. This is how you do resumes. And I'm looking to do things a little bit different, because I think we need to have a little bit of a different conversation. So Joan's right that this has been so good. Okay.
Aww. That's awesome. Well, first and foremost, let me know. Can you see my screen? I'm new to StreamYard, guys.
Yes, so, we can see the screen.
All right, so you can see my screen because I'm now just seeing this. So there's a few things. This is our contact information. Danielle at danielleposa.com, myself, Nicole at wellbeinghacker.com. I'll also insert this in the chat. There's a link here I'll put in the chat. We do have a free book list that we offer, and it is about really gaining more purpose, not only in your career but in your life. Okay, so these are our book recommendations. I will preface that this does, if you do opt in for this, you will be part of our email subscription. If you don't like that, then feel free to unsubscribe. But if you want to get more interesting, strategies, tips from us, then please, feel free to join that list.
Right.
The books
I'm
on
just going to
there
put
are
up a something.
awesome.
We need more of these types of combos.
What's that?
I'm just putting up here. We need more of these types of conversations.
Awesome.
This has been a great session, Ken and Nicole. Thank you. I want to make sure you see these.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, guys. Yeah, I'd love to have, we'll have Danielle join here as well. She has a great background, Gallup, and she also worked for and was really an apprentice to Deepak Chopra.
Right. No, but I think it's very important to have these types of conversations, because I think
yes,
I'm a big believer in self-care, and as part of it, it makes a big difference. Again, Joan would love the link to get the free resources. Ren, awesome event. Thank you for sharing resources. So you asked, and people have answered.
That's great. Now, Ken, I am trying to join the chat. It's asking me about YouTube. Connect your YouTube account?
No. What I would say is this: when the event is over, I would go back and put comments in the chat, because this will be on LinkedIn Live.
Oh, okay. I can put the comments in the chat there. Okay.
Just put the comments there, and you can follow. Like, for all these people that are saying here, just put a comment back to let them know, or put the information there, because I find it's a lot easier for me to respond that way.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's great.
I'm going to do before I forget, I'm going to do a picture of us. So we can put this as a post tomorrow. It was great having you on, and let other people engage that way too.
I love it. Perfect. So this was great. I would love for us to have this chat again, and yeah, please reach out if anyone is, just questioning what their future looks like, or if you are interested in just learning more about, what it means to have a more meaningful career, then I'd love to have the opportunity to speak with you. So I will get all of those links in the chat.
All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Soon. Safe. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.